Let's get things started! This hand of mine glows with an awesome power!
Greetings once again, my friends. I am the narrator without my eye patch and without my really hokey-looking tuxedo. Why? Because our story has been told. The mysteries have been unraveled, kind of. The heroes have been exonerated, kind of. It's the end of an era. Welcome back, everybody, to I'm going to say the second to last episode of the G Gundam podcast, because and a lot of people think like, this is the end, and we'll explain that in a bit. But yeah, so we have watched all the episodes. All the characters have been revealed. All the mobile suits have been revealed. All of that stuff. And I can already tell you that there were some questions before you guys give us more for the live stream that we can kind of take care of here. But we wanted to take a week and just kind of let everything wash over you, Andrea, specifically, because your brand spanking new to it, and see what, like, in retrospect, your overall thoughts on this series was. Now, I do want to, I want to start here. First of all, I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drek, and this is my lovely wife joining me, Andrea. How you doing, Andrea?
Oh, fine.
It's been a rough Sunday for us, and we're actually just getting ready for things to get busier. So it's kind of a good thing that we're wrapping things up when we are, so that we can then go focus on other things. But originally, you were hesitant about doing G Gundam because you didn't know if Gundam was your thing, and you were kind of worried about it. I remember, there's live stream where you're just like, I don't know if I want to do that. And
well, I wasn't big into robots.
Yeah, so at that point you walked in very hesitant, but I kind of urged, as well as some of the chat, saying like this is something that you're used to, and overall you would probably enjoy it. So now that you have seen it all the way through, were we right? Were we wrong? Did you like it? So how are you feeling about G Gundam after watching all 49 episodes?
It's pretty good.
Would you say it's like one of the best things you've ever watched?
Probably not the best, but
it is a lot more similar than you thought initially.
Kind of.
Because you had watched Pokemon, you had watched Digimon, you had watched Beyblade. You knew the concept of tournaments. And so at that point, that was kind of a good springboard to bring you into the series, right?
Yeah.
Except the one thing you didn't know, and didn't know if you would like, was the giant robots, as you just barely said. You didn't know if you were going to like the giant robots. Here's why I didn't agree with you, is because you liked Metabots. Mm-hmm. And Metabots is basically Gundam, but childized. All right? It really is, in a weird way. Because I can't use Gunpla, which is basically what Gundam's answer to things like Metabots were. But I know you liked Metabots, mm-hmm. and I know you like things like Power Rangers, and so that at that point, I don't think it was a big jump to take you from those into this particular series. I'm not going, like, we'll answer this question in a little bit, but at least in this context for Gundam, because this is what you know, kind of thing. And I know a few people want me to ask this question, and I'm very hesitant about doing it because, well, let me explain it really quick. Some people wanted to know what your feeling of the Gundam formula is. And here's the problem with asking that question. You didn't watch the Gundam formula.
No.
And you might be confused, but you're like, because you kind of have that puzzled look on your face. Because of what this was, it couldn't follow all of the beats and norms of an original Gundam series. Just to give you kind of example here. Usually a Gundam series will start on the colonies, It will somehow make its way to Earth, then it will go from Earth to space, and then usually either it will get resolved on the Earth or it will get resolved in space, and you will have some character development happening between that and there, but there will always be like, okay, we must get back to Earth, pivotal moment, we get to Earth. Okay, now what? Now we're running from people, and now we have this pivotal moment on Earth, now we're getting back up into space, kind of thing. And this doesn't follow that. One of the reasons that I'm going to say is because it had to follow the tenets of a tournament-based kind of martial arts show. What do I mean? Well, you had to have a training phase, aka the Guyana Highlands. You had to have that. You also had to have the tournament itself be a part of it. That's in a typical Gundam show, there's no tournament. There's an ongoing conflict. And so at that point, this doesn't follow the Gundam formula because it was in its own right intriguing. All right. It had to adhere to other norms from other genres. And so at that point, that's why I'm not really going to ask the question, is because you haven't seen the Gundam formula. You saw G Gundam, and what you saw, I mean, it worked for you, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like,
well, you gotta say it.
well, I don't have to say it all the time.
Well, yes, it's a podcast. We talk. We talk back and forth. So that's why I'm not really going to ask that question. And I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, if people want us to actually go into like a live stream, and then I can explain it a little bit better. But I think overall, I'm at least happy that you don't consider it disappointing, because you were kind of worried that it was going to be disappointing, that you weren't going to get into it. And I was, at least on my perspective, I was dead set that this would work for you, given what I know you've watched. And thankfully it did hit. And it hit because not only did you like this, but, you know, I was also screaming like, you're going to find this hilarious. And was I wrong?
How would you know that if...
Well, because I was also saying during those live streams, like, you will find it hilarious because there will be so much stuff to laugh at. And I mean, there were a couple points that took you completely off guard, and I think you enjoyed them for it.
Well, they were shockers.
So there you go. But overall, I would say that this has been a worthwhile kind of experiment into doing podcasts like this. And it was equally interesting, I think, for other people just to be able to see your reaction to a lot of the twists and the turns of this series. So here's my next question that I have for you. You liked it. Did it have problems? I know that you never like asking, or you don't like being asked the negative aspects, because you don't like, for lack of a better term, shitting on something. But
I rarely do.
Yes. And so at that point, like, you were always kind of the optimist, you know, like, well, I'm screaming at Last of Us Part 2. You're trying to find something positive out of it, which I think is an admirable trait. I really do. But in your opinion, what were there things that G Gundam could have improved on?
Not that I can see. I mean, I haven't seen any other of the series, you know.
I'm just saying as a story in general. So, like, you know, we talked a lot about really fast exposition happening throughout the story, whereas they could have, you know, stretched things out a little bit. It would have made more sense. And I get it, through the context of 49 episodes, you can only do so much. But I remember that being a talking point with both of us, that they basically would go really slow for a little bit and then for like an entire 1 to 2 episodes to try and get everybody up to speed.
I'm sure.
Which, that's the other thing that's in the Gundam formula that's not here, is they actually do take the time to build up to those insane moments. Some series better than others. So at that point, like, we did have complaints with it. Can you think of anything else that you personally had a gripe with it?
No.
That's without the positivity lens on. It's okay. You can knock. We are talking about it in retrospect. You can knock it. It's okay. I have to go through this process, guys, because she really does like try to find the positive. So.
Well, aside from just basically how they told the story, I'm pretty sure it was okay.
Okay. This is another question that I know gets asked a little bit that I kind of want to bring up here because it is kind of important. What are your viewpoints on like post-apocalyptic futures? Because a lot of that is here, you know, because remember, Earth is in tatters because of all the previous Gundam fights, because of all the stuff that's happened up until that point. And I mean, I want to say you watch them, but you're not like going out and looking for them. Am I correct in that?
Like, what do you mean?
You don't go looking for The Walking Dead, basically. If you find The Walking Dead and you happen to like it, then that's fine. But you're not going to go look for the next Walking Dead.
I haven't seen any much of Walking Dead.
I'm using it as an example. Because, okay, so The Walking Dead is a post-apocalyptic story. Okay?
I know what it is.
Yeah.
But
So at that point, if you come across it and you watch it and you like it, that's fine. But you're not, like, after that, you're not like, ooh, let's go find the next kind of Walking Dead story. You instead are more along the lines of, it gets presented to you, you like it, you watch it, kind of thing.
Well, I'm pretty sure if I liked one season, then maybe I would go and look for the next one.
Yes, I get that. But, like, would you go and look for, I'm trying to think of another post-apocalyptic series that would kind of fit in. Crap. Let's use another example here. You love The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Okay. You like The Last of Us for what it is, but after that's done, you're not going out and looking for, say, Days Gone.
Maybe, you never know, because, I mean, if I like the theme of that kind of genre, it might be just...
But along the way, let's just say you find, I don't know, Pretty Little Liars, and you start liking that, then you'll sit down and watch that instead.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I would go back to the type of genre.
No. I'm not saying that you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, what I'm trying to explain here is that so you basically go for whatever tickles your fancy. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fixed genre. Whereas we have people who are fixed in wanting to watch everything post-apocalyptic, and that's all they ever watch. And they know post-apocalyptic storylines that they can beat for beat tell you that everything's right, kind of thing. And that's not you. Like you watch a variety of different genres.
Well, yeah.
So at that point, that's kind of the deal here is, while this was interesting, I think it was more the tournament access or the tournament aspect of it that was intriguing to you, not necessarily the post-apocalyptic portion of it. Because, I mean, to be honest, like it's kind of hard to even make this argument because the post-apocalyptic aspect of this series wasn't even addressed consistently until the end of the show. Like you occasionally would have like, oh yes, this horrible Earth set in an episode, but then 3 episodes would go by, you wouldn't hear anything, and maybe the 4th you'd hear something. Up until like the last 5 episodes where it's like, the Earth is destroyed, the Earth is destroyed, the Earth is destroyed, we must restore the Earth, kind of thing. And so at that point, it's not
How
really...
is the Earth destroyed? It's just basically...
based in the concept of all the damage from the Gundam fights, kind of thing. We must heal the Earth.
And yet it just seems like there are people living still on Earth.
Yep. Poor people are living on Earth. That's the way that this works. That's the way that the system works. If you're wealthy enough, you can go to the colony. So,
I don't know why people think, Earth is not inhabitable,
But the premise is kind of like I told you in the past that the creators love to stick with 2 themes within their shows. One, that war is deplorable. Like all Gundam shows, despite all of the battles that you saw and all that, there's always an anti-war message that's always filtered through. And in G Gundam's case, it was like all the damage that the Gundam fight has caused to Earth, kind of thing. And then the second one is the Earth is damaged, ergo we must heal the Earth. It's basically an environmentalist message. Since we as horrible monster humans, we wreck the Earth, it is our duty to heal it, kind of thing. And this is where this gets a little confusing because other series will approach it of, no, what we need to do is we need to migrate off of Earth and go into space and let the planet heal, kind of thing. And
yet leave all the poor people down on Earth.
Yes, and that's always the fun part about it. Is like, oh, well, I guess the poor people just get to stay there, right? I love Gundam, but Gundam has its flaws in its own thought patterns, so I have no problem making fun of it. It's why I watch the show. It's why I love Gundam the way I do, is because I like that conflict of being able to like stand for these causes, but also acknowledging its contradictions. So it's one of the reasons why I revere Gundam just as much as, say, my brother reveres Star Trek. And it's for the same thing, ultimately. So at that point, like, I get that those messages exist. I don't necessarily agree with those messages. I know, horrible, evil white man displaying his beliefs, but I do think that war is avoidable, and I do think that the planet can heal on its own. I just have a lot more faith in the planet than environmentalists do, in my personal opinion. So at that point, you didn't really have to deal with these themes because they weren't shoved in your face like they would be in another Gundam series, where like we would constantly be talking about how this war is drawn on for way too long. Like you've heard the concept of World War I being called the 100-Year War, even though it didn't last 100 years. It's just like it's called the 100-Year War because it felt like that kind of thing. Have you ever heard that?
No.
Yeah, I think World War I was like almost 10 years, and everybody called like there was like a mantra going on that it was the 100-Year War because it went on so long that people forgot what it was being fought about. And every war in every Gundam series has this problem. We've been fighting so long, we don't know what we're fighting for. And we fought for so long, we have destroyed the Earth. But we all have different ways of restoring the Earth. And yeah, it's a thing. And I'm trying very hard not to rail off, but because again, this doesn't really follow a lot of the norms. Let's get into G Gundam itself here for a second. The story that it was trying to tell. Do you have any not gripes but disagreements, say in like the pacing of it? I know that we were talking about the like having to do all that, but overall the story that was being told was good to you, or did you have issues with it? That's how I know. That's how people know when I'm presenting a question to Andreas. I start going like this, and and then you give your opinion. Sorry.
I'm trying to think. Basically, it's no. Aside from no, not really. It just.
I mean, you think the premise of the Gundam fight's silly, but and it is. It absolutely is. We're going to end all war. How are we going to do that? With a tournament. And so basically a war. Yes, except they can't kill each other. Except in the final round when your prime minister said that they could kill each other. Yeah.
I mean, you're just basically bouncing between dealing with the tournament and dealing with the enemy at the same time.
Yep.
That's kind of expected in some kind of a movie like that.
All
or
right.
a series.
All right. So with every story comes characters. You have to have characters that you have to follow. And I know that everybody that is going to be, reaching out to us under the sun is going to be like, cover this character that was only there for an episode. There's not much to say about characters like Chico Rodriguez. I'm sorry, there isn't. I know that everybody wants us to make fun of Tequila Gundam, but Chico as a character, there wasn't a whole lot of foundation there. And so at that point,
especially if they're never
could you have brought Chico into the finals? No, not with the level of character development he'd gotten.
Especially if they only show up in one episode.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of an anime mantra of like, okay, we have this really cool character, but he's basically you're not going to know this term, but I'll explain it to you as we go along. They are the red shirt of the episode. In Star Trek, there was a joke that if you wore you've seen a little bit of Star Trek, right? So you've seen that they wear like different uniforms and things like that?
No.
Okay. So there's usually 3 uniforms. There's blue, there's yellow, and there's red. And in the original series, blue's always meant kind of like sciences. But depending on the series, when we go further into the future, yellow started as like a command color, like your captains and your officers would be in it. And then it got changed to engineering kind of thing. Whereas in the original series, red was like engineering and security. And so let's just say like there's a problem on the planet and then you had to go down onto the planet. If anybody in that away team was wearing a red shirt, guaranteed they weren't living to go back to the ship. All right. So they were disposable roughly. And they were always played by people who were just extras and they would die soon after kind of thing. And so that's where the term red shirts comes from, is there's not a whole lot of development there. Maybe they're one day away from retirement and that's it. And that's all you get. And that's the same concept of people like Chico Rodriguez, of to some extent Michelob Chariot.
What's her name? That Sai she likes.
Cecile. They're red shirts. There's not a whole lot to explain because they'll be gone the next episode, kind of thing. And so I know that a lot of people would love us to go through in-depth concepts of all of the characters, but there's too many. We'd be here for hours. And in a lot of cases, the most we could say was, okay, what do we think of Hans? It's okay. That's all you can say. What do you think of Romario Manini? It's okay. Kind of thing. And so I'm not going to bounce back and forth, but let's start off with the main characters. I believe that there are 2 because you follow them everywhere. Let's start first off with the King of Hearts himself, Domon Kashu. So there's a lot to kind of go over, and I kind of want to give his character a fair shake here. What did you think of Domon initially when you saw him? Like, what if you could summarize what you thought of Domon in like 3 words? What would they be?
He was awesome. Hey, you said 3 words.
I did not expect that to get blown up in my face, everybody. Could we say angry is one of them?
Yeah, definitely.
He was definitely angry.
Like he had something going on.
Showboat. He had to be the guy who was catching all the bullets with his hand. And the other one that I would point out is works alone. And technically that's 2 words, but I mean, he had to work alone. He never wanted to be around Rain. He always had to go off and deal with his own stuff. But this is basically the basic concepts that we get of Domon. And eventually we do get to know like why he is who he is and the situation that kind of surrounds him, which at that point I think kind of leads into more development for him as a character, why he is so I must stand alone. After hearing about his circumstances, did you, because there were a couple of episodes in there where you kind of got mad at Domon for like always rushing headlong into battle and not really considering things. After you heard why he does this and why he wishes to stand alone and the consequences that he faces, did you start to gain a little bit of sympathy for him or empathy, or at least empathize with him as to why he had to do things alone?
Well, I'm sure because he basically has things he has to take care of that he's like, he doesn't want to get others involved.
He's one of those characters to me that always feels like he had to have put the entire weight of the world on his shoulders. He had to bear the weight because no one else could, except he had friends that were willing to help bear the weight with him. And he never, at the beginning points of the series, he never got over that. He always would treat people adversarially. He wouldn't, I mean, even Rain. Like, Rain's the perfect example. He was a dick to her in the beginning of the show. And
yeah, it was so confusing with that relationship.
which is really sad. Which is really sad, considering she was one of the few people that truly got the stakes for him. and you kind of sit there and go, well, she's the only one that understands what you're going through. Why would you go out of your way to shove her away? Say, no, I will deal with this alone, kind of thing. And nope, he kept on doing it. But thankfully, after, I actually like to say, like, after his entire world got shattered, after Shinjuku, we started to see that turn around. Because, you know, his brother was against him, his master, or rather his father figure, his mentor, was against him. And so at that point, something internally with Domon kicked in, saying, I need friends. I need support. I need rivals. I need something to be able to rely on, whether he was willing to admit it or not. Would I be wrong in that?
No.
No, I think that he really he kind of needed to go that road. And this is how he handled it. When would you say, like, some of the angry and must run off and handle things on his own, when did that start to melt away? Would we say it was Guyana, or was it the tournament?
I would say more of the Guyana Highlands.
I want to say, like, the real point where you saw it, like, you would always see little bits get chipped away at until he finally mastered the hyper mode. And then at that point, he wasn't angry anymore. He was peaceful. He was, he felt rage, but it was more like righteous fury kind of thing. It wasn't that he was just like emo for the sake of being emo.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, so considering how far that is into Guyana, I'm going to say it wasn't Guyana. It was probably the final round, because it was near the wrap up of the Guyana Highlands. And after that was when you got to see it anchored in the final round of the tournament. Then he started being a much more different character. And I think we ought to add a couple of new words here. Correct. And feel free to say that we don't need to add them if you don't think so. Aloof.
Oh, definitely.
He did not understand how anything worked at that. Like, it's almost like you rip away, like think of Domon as an onion, and you peel away all the layers, and you finally get to that core, and it's just a little boy who has never, ever learned anything about life, especially when it came towards stuff you would learn in, like, elementary school, girlfriends, boyfriends, all that stuff. He didn't have really any of that knowledge. And when Rain would confront him about it, or Alan B would, he'd just be like, I didn't think about it that way. The best way I know how to make the joke is in Dragon Ball Z Abridged. Goku in that is, you've listened to some of that stuff. Goku's kind of portrayed as a dunderhead. He only ever thinks about his stomach, or how he's going to get through, this particular fight. But then all of a sudden, when you start talking about fighting with him, he becomes like this genius. He can actually tell you, like, the arc of your punch and everything like that. And then as soon as you kind of get him out of that, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was talking about fighting.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's how Domon was. Domon knew martial arts. He knew nothing else about life. And that was kind of, it went from being really annoying to kind of endearing. Like, you kind of liked him for it, right?
Pretty much.
I mean, add in stuff that I'm forgetting here.
No, you pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, so, I mean, at that point, he's a lovable character. He's a lovable dunderhead. And I especially liked when he kind of acknowledged that he did need Rain in the end. Like, a lot of people think that we've been probably been so mean to Domon and Rain, but really you don't start to see the mushy stuff until he lands in for the final round, and then it starts building up again, and then Allenby gets thrown into the works, and then they build it up again. Like, that's where you can really appreciate the shipping that is Rain and Domon. But moving into the final arc here, so everything basically breaks around Domon again. He finds out that his brother is alive through some weird android thing. He has to kill his brother in order to save the world. Actually kill him after getting to know him again. He has to kill his master. His girlfriend gets taken away from him. Like, crap hits the fan for Domon a lot.
It's like,
and in
why?
this case, it's actually cool how he handled it this time, because instead of just saying, like, I'm giving into despair and I must continue to go down this lonely road and nothing will ever change, and this time around, he's like, no, I will make things change with this hand of mine. And I always love the realization that happens there at the end of the episode, and what to me defines Domon as a character. Would you say the same? Like, what point in this story did you latch on to Domon as a character?
Which point?
And you wanted to see him succeed? No, so what I'm saying in which point is, like, was it at the beginning? Was it in Shinjuku? Was it in Guyana? Was it in the final round? Was it in the very end? Where did you officially latch on to Domon and want to see him succeed?
Probably around in the final
round.
Final round.
I'm kind of there too. Because I have a real annoyance towards emo characters, and I get a lot of crap in the Gundam community when I say that, because I don't like the titular Amuro Ray. I don't like I don't like a lot of the Gundam main protagonists, because they're all whiny emo little bitches, and it's so irritating to listen to them whine about how life is so hard for them. And I'm like, shut the F up. You are not a refugee in war. You have a means to change the war. You are the fulcrum upon a battle strategy kind of thing. In particular, I'll give you an example. There's always an episode in a Gundam series where the main character gets fed up with people relying on him so much, because nobody else has a mobile suit that is super powerful to be able to rely on, that they run away from home. And the entire episode is about how they're running away, but they can't get more than maybe a few miles. And then something happens, they have to go back. They're still whiny and emo, but they have to go back. Kind of thing. It's basically the equivalent of your 5-year-old says he's going to run away, and then he comes back and goes, I did run away. I ran down the block, and then I ran out of food, so I came back. Kind of thing. That's what it is. And it always bugs the living hell out of me, and that's Domon to me in the first half of the series. The second half, he is way more compelling and way easier to get into than he is at the beginning.
I know, and especially he's willing to accept people as friends and, take their advice and rely on them when he needs them.
It's part of the reason why I laugh at him so much, and why I tried to get you to laugh at him, was because underneath all that angry facade, like, I've seen the end of the series, I know what that's covering up. And so at that point, it's like, aw, Domon, you don't know how to deal with this new bully, do you? Kind of thing. So I can laugh at him. But I agree with you. The final round is where he starts to shape, and you start to get invested in him. And I have this with a lot of anime protagonists. Like, when I was watching Dragon Ball Z for the first time, I'm absolute sacrilege, Andrea, because I didn't like Goku, and I still don't like Goku. I like Naruto, but I do not like the beginning Naruto. I like adult Naruto, and in my opinion, he's better than Goku, kind of thing. I never latch on to the main character. Mm-hmm. Never. I always latch on to side characters. It's only through like a second or a third viewing that I latch on to main characters. Specifically, like Yusuke Urameshi would be an example of that. So overall, do we feel like that Domon's was a good hero arc?
Pretty much. I mean, he's definitely had a rocky start at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but then he turned out, to be the ideal hero.
And he actually became kind of a likable guy, not just through, like, the way I know how to describe it is, we never saw him happy until he was being drugged and thought he saw his family. And then you never saw that again until near the end. It's like, okay, he's finally happy. He's finally at peace with everything that's happened, kind of thing. And I like that aspect. And considering the level of struggle that we had to go through, I think it is actually worth it. I mean, for crying out loud, how many people were waiting until the end episode for him to say, "Rain, I love you"?
Mm-hmm.
When everybody knew he did. Like, we all knew back when Rain was in his head and she was seen as the most important thing in his life, kind of thing. I mean, for crying out loud, like, we even knew after Saisaishi did the panty shot that he cared, because he was just like, oh, yeah, this is not the little girl I knew when I left for training. She's a woman now, kind of thing. I get it. You still think the panty peep was a bad thing. I find it endearing. I find it endearing because it's silly. So let's look at the opposite of that coin. What do we think of Rain during those arcs? In the beginning, insufferable. I've no problem saying that on my end.
It's a roller coaster with her.
Would you be friends with Rain at the beginning of the series?
She almost acts like she's a mother to him or something.
Yeah, or the other example that I can give is Kagura with Kyo in Fruits Basket, where she's like, I'm your girlfriend and you're going to accept it, and that's all that's ever going to matter, kind of thing. But it's not like Domon got a choice. Instead, he's getting dragged along everywhere.
Well, at the beginning, it seemed like they were more like best friends or something rather than if they were actually boyfriend and girlfriend. It just didn't seem like... Make it sound like they are a couple, and you don't...
Where are you getting the best friends thing? Because they were arguing all the time.
I know. That's why I'm like, you don't see them as a couple, because it seems like Domon... That's like the last thing on Domon's mind. And yet...
well, I mean...
Rain is kind of like...
It is literally the last thing on his mind.
And yet Rain is...
Everything else is fighting, freeing my dad, and then Rain.
Like, it's like... And yet Rain is like, no, you need to pay attention to me.
Or I'm dumping you. Oh, I hated that threat at the beginning of the series. I hated it so much. Do this or I'm dumping you. Okay, have a nice life.
And then it's like later on, it's like, okay, I'm done with whatever I had to do. Let's get back together.
Yeah. Oh. She's kind of insufferable. I would actually say like she is the best jokes that I know how to do is if people have ever seen Scrubs. Eventually they have an episode where the OBGYN or they call them the gyno girls. The OBGYN come in and they are basically like the high school cheerleaders, roughly. So like they all have kind of that vapid stereotype. And that's Rain at the beginning, is everything is attached to like how nobody understands truly how she feels, which is kind of funny because that's kind of Tomon's argument too. It's like they were polar opposites and then they got drawn together. So at that point, moving further along into the story, I will say that getting the background episode on Sate helped a lot, because then you got to see a life for her outside of all of this situation. You didn't really get to see that with Domon, because basically here's Domon's life according to everybody. Scared little kid, went to go train with the Master Agent, came back, his father was in prison and he had to go hunt down the Dark Gundam, and fighter, and then training. Like this is his life, all right? But Rain, it was like she was also very resistant to coming and helping out with this situation. You don't even get the touching moments post all this happening until way later in the story. Like one of my favorite things that are drawn is when Domon sees Rain after he's paying respects to his mom's grave, and you get to see her in a kimono. And she's like, oh my gosh, she is so pretty. And they've really kind of gone out of their way to show that she's a caring woman kind of thing. Instead, she more feels like that one doctor who will just throw you around and has the coldest hands on earth at the beginning of the series. And she's also just played off as this airhead, for lack of a better term. Nobody gets my problems, nobody gets my feelings, etc. But then you have the Sade episode, and you get to see a life outside of all this situation for her, where she actually, like, she was going to college, she was a good doctor, she held true to her oaths, she was also kind of into engineering, kind of like her dad, and so she started to become a character, at least a much more tolerable character. I'm not saying that she wasn't a doctor before that, but you always had that stereotype going on. The perfect explanation is Chico's sister. If you peek Domon, I will dump you, kind of thing. So you knew she was a doctor, but now or you saw the fact that she was a doctor, but now you know she's a doctor. She's a caring individual. I would actually I mean, am I wrong? Before we move on into another phase of that, am I wrong in that?
No.
Did you start to kind of open up with her in kind of the, like, moving from the beginning into Shinjuku?
No, that's pretty much how she would be.
She started to become kind of a more caring individual. I also like, even though we make fun of her fight suit, and yes, it does need to be made fun of, I did like the fact that they did that.
Mm-hmm.
Because through those little glimpses, Rain gets to see it from Domon's side, which then she has something to relate to. And funniest thing, after she started doing that, guess what she stopped doing? Stopped threatening to dump Domon. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
She did. Because I think part of it was because she actually understood what Domon was going through. So Shinjuku kind of all builds up into this. Then we get into the training at Guyana. Not really a whole lot was done with Rain here. They just kind of built her up. Okay, I'm this caring individual, but maybe occasionally we're going to show that, yes, I'm a woman, and yes, there's a possible attraction between me and Domon now, or Rain and Domon now. Yes, I know you don't like the panty peek, but that's kind of one of the reasons.
I never said I didn't like.
Oh, you didn't like it when it happened.
I was a little surprised.
Yes. So at that point, it's like, I like it because then you started to have kind of the beginnings of a romance, where it's just like, oh, she's not that little girl I knew. Now she is a woman, and yes, now I am feeling those kinds of feelings for her. Not feelings of like, oh, yay, boing, but more like, okay, yeah. It's a weird thing to explain in anime. Like a character does a couple of good deeds, and then the opposite sex person to them starts to notice that they are more manly or womanly, kind of thing. The example that I'm going to give is with Winry and with one of my favorite couples, Winry Rockbell and Edward Elric, which you're going to get to see in the next little bit, where Edward starts to do things that are noble. And even though, like, so Winry has this policy. She won't date guys that are shorter than her. Edward is shorter than her by quite a margin. And part of that is because he hasn't been able to grow in years. So at that point, like, he starts doing some noble things, and she has shown no attraction to him whatsoever this entire time. But after he starts doing those good deeds and going out and acting on them, she starts to notice his shoulders are a little bit broader. He's starting to look more manly to her. And it's just a subtle way to be able to say, oh my gosh, I think I'm getting attracted to them, kind of thing. And that's what I think happened with Rain, is because of Domon doing all of these good deeds, he started to look attractive to Rain. And because of Rain doing all these nice things, Domon started to see her not just as a pain in the butt, but as a woman, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that. It's kind of the budding of a new relationship between them. Final round, not really a whole lot was done either, except for the Allenby jealousy arc. I'm going to ask this question because I think it's actually worthwhile in retrospect. Did Rain have anything to worry about when it came to Allenby?
Probably not to a great extent, but she kind of wondered.
Would you dare say like they probably blew her advantages out of proportion to an extent? Like what I mean is like, did they blow Allenby's pros out of proportion? Because all the emphasis was she liked fighting like Domo, and that obviously that's all you need to build a relationship, right? Well, no, because we've seen Rain building an actual relationship here.
I think she just kind of felt like.
So I guess that's what I'm asking you. Like, was Allenby ever competition to Rain? I'd argue no.
I don't think so. I think it's just more of the fact that, sure, maybe she thinks maybe Domon does care about her, but she kind of feels like a fish out of water compared to Allenby. And I think it's just more the fact that, well, Domon likes Allenby because they have something in common, whereas she feels like they really don't have something as quite in common that maybe...
Which maybe I'm wrong, but I think Rain kind of sells herself short. Because at that point, she'd gone into she'd piloted Shining Gundam a couple of times. So at that point, she at least understood it. She understood the prospect of it. But she didn't, like, she wasn't into the fighting. And that's fine. She's a doctor. She's not supposed to be. But
yeah.
She at least understood it.
Well, yeah, but
and that's I think, all that anybody was asking.
Yeah, but I think it was kind of along the lines where she felt like she didn't understand why Domon likes fighting so much until, wasn't it Schwartz that kind of told her, you know, they usually like to communicate with their fists and
martial
arts.
Wow, you quote it. You obviously know it. Oh, I thought you were going to quote the saying.
I can't remember.
Martial artists are ill at ease and can only communicate their emotions through their fists.
Oh, I wasn't going that far, but
I've seen this series like 6 times. It's in my head.
That's because I think she, you know, he it's like, wow, Domon just seems to be wanting to spend more time with her because...
So in that case, how would you describe Allenby's relationship to Domon?
I think they're just more like, well, to Allenby, it sounds like, well, she kind of has a crush on him, but at the same time, they just feel like they're just like best friends that knew each other and they have something to...
I have a better theory on that one, and I'm not saying that yours isn't valid, but I want to bring this up to you and see if you consider it. So, like, because this is actually something you can relate on, because you have an older brother, and so at that point, like, this is how I view Allenby, is you have a friend and he has a little sister, and that little sister is more in tune with what you like as opposed to the friend is. So in some cases, like as a guy, you'll go over and hang out with your friend, but you'll also try very hard to hang out with the little sister too, because she likes what you like, and so you guys are going to agree. And then as things go along, you start to notice that, you know, she's becoming a woman and everything like that. And so it becomes more of a crush. Whereas to the little sister, it's been a crush the entire time because you've shown attention to her. You've given her somebody to talk to. And so she loves you, kind of thing. That's how I look at Allenby, is she's like the one cool little sister. And there's not really a whole lot to invest in romantically with Allenby. Not yet, anyway. Not the way that she's kind of painted. Am I wrong in that assessment, or
no? It's either that, or she probably assumed maybe what's Allenby trying to play at with Domon by getting all of his attention, because she could be trying to.
Which is kind of endearing in a way.
Like, is she trying to do something to sabotage his chances of winning the tournament, you know, by acting nice. It's like one of those two kids.
Oh, you actually think that she was trying to sabotage Domon?
No, I'm just saying that could have been a possible thing at the beginning. Like she's.
Oh, I get your point. Yeah.
And then when she probably realizes, no, maybe she's just wanting to be good friends with Domon, and then it's like it kind of.
That's kind of why I latch on to the lovable little sister role, is because you don't really like. Look, I get it. Allenby has curves, but they went out of their way to never display them, and so at that point, it always feels like she was just the little sister, where she got what Domon was trying to do better than Rain, but she was always painted off as, not being stupider, but being a little bit more naive because she was young.
I mean, that's just one of those examples where Allenby was in the Gundam with Domon, and she's like kind of suspicious, like, what are you doing in here? You should.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people who are going to scream at me about Allenby, and we'll get into her, I think she is actually a vital character to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate Allenby. I like what Allenby presents to the situation, because in a lot of cases, I actually thank Allenby, because I think in a lot of cases, she kind of knocked down that last brick wall that was between Domon and Rain. She kind of knocked that down by getting both of them to see that there was a wall there and that they needed to break it. What's happening over there?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. So I don't dislike Allenby. I love her. I think for what she is supposed to do, she's great. It's just in a lot of cases, I don't see her as ever, even in my first viewing, I never saw Allenby as competition to Rain.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't emphasize the curves enough, which to me, from a viewer's perspective, if I'm seeing it that way, then Domon's probably seeing that way too. Because, like I said, one of my biggest arguments here is, in her regular attire, you would never know she has any womanly curves. But then put her in the fight suit, and then you have to be accurate. And you're like, oh, she does have a butt. Oh, she does have boobs. Because you're not seeing it that way. She looks like a Digimon character in a Gundam series.
Yeah, and why are we talking more about her than Rain?
Well, I don't know. I wanted to get into the possible rivalry, because in my personal opinion, there wasn't any.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know what the series was trying to paint, but I don't think there ever was. I think at that point, Rain and Domon had enough of a foundation that it was kind of pointless to bring her into it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So then we go into the final arc, and this is where Rain's character falls apart to me. Because of the whole, my father's sins are mine, and ergo I can never see you again, because my dad hated your dad, and da-da-da, and Rain falls apart for me. She really does. It's not even enough that Domon says, Rain, I love you, and she shoots out of Dark Gundam like a poop out of nowhere. Or the perfect example I could give is when Dragon Ball Z Abridged tried to show the birth of Goten, and he basically just shoots out and goes through walls. That's how it feels when she got shot out of the Dark Gundam. That's not enough. Because you had to endure I can't have what I want because my dad wrecked it for me.
It's like she did a whole Dear John.
Yeah, it is kind of like she did the reverse Dear John, where she made herself feel bad.
Because it just seemed like you could have just been easily as shocked as Domon, and it's like, well, you had nothing to do with it.
At the same time, it's like adult logic here. Do you really think Domon held you responsible for your dad's actions?
No.
Yeah. So my problem is like we're treating these characters as rational adults, right? You didn't ever think to ask Domon if he held you responsible? Because we already know his answer. He would have said, no, I don't hold you responsible. What your dad did is what your dad did.
Yeah.
If anything, I don't think he even harbored any ill will towards Dr. Mikamura, did he?
I don't think so. I don't
think they ever explained it, but I don't think he did.
To me, I just don't think he really knew the whole entire story about him too much compared to like.
Well, yeah, because he was not there when they revealed it. So at that point, everything's getting told to him second or third.
I think he's just kind of getting bits and pieces, but he didn't like, this is all your fault for imprisoning my father and getting him into this mess and all that,
Mm-hmm. So I don't think he harbored any of that ill will, but then they had to have that really stupid anchor of my father's sins are my own. She falls apart after that point. Even getting a Seki Haten Kyoken and a cloak wasn't enough to redeem it. Because I was like, you were an idiot for a good 4 to 5 episodes here. So your dad screwed up his life so you don't get to be happy? Bullshit! I hate it when characters are written like that. My fate is inevitable because my dad broke his best friend's Starscream when they were 5 years old. It's like, fucking hell, are you not an individual?
Apparently, no.
And so at that, I'm not even kidding. Like, at one point, I may have found Rain attractive, and then that arc happened, and man, the attraction went out the window, and I just can't deal with her. I will at least give myself credit here. I kept up appearances for this watch through, but I knew what was coming, and I knew I was gonna get pissed because it never gets better. Like, I mean, did you get pissed when she pulled that card?
I was disappointed to see her actually go down that route.
Did it make sense at all to you?
I don't even know why she took it that personal. I mean, I think,
yeah, right.
I think I would have, she would have seen. Like,
I mean, we got an emphasis that Rain went to college, right? Are you telling me that she wouldn't have understood that her father's sins are not her own?
Like, I think she would have felt either betrayed or just really disappointed and all that about what her father was capable of, and felt like, I don't even know you. I don't even know why I'm here to support you.
Yeah.
And not just stick by Domo. And instead she just like, it's like, you weren't even part of the crime to begin with, so why are you defending him?
And what makes it even worse is after this point, after you've had this realization, right? After that, the series basically treats her like a piece of furniture with boobs. I'm not even kidding, because it's just like, oh, I guess I need a woman to run the Dark Gundam. Hey, there's this woman right here who easily could have been like a female lieutenant kind of thing, and he just shoves her into the Dark Gundam. And so you had that moment, and then even when they're having that whole "I love you" moment, it's just like, hey, you're just a piece of furniture that they need to get out of the Dark Gundam so that the day can be saved. Just like she went from main character to window dressing in the story. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, okay. And no, I'm not saying because she's a woman. I'm saying because they literally, in my opinion, they wrote her into a corner, and it was a bad corner. And it was not even fixed when the day was saved. At that point, I kind of admit, man, Alan B looks way more attractive than you do.
Are you saying they should have put Alan B in that?
At the very end, yeah. Yeah, because at that point, it's like, well, I mean, she at least has confidence in herself. Whereas I have serious doubts as to whether or not Rain has confidence in herself. What happens when she finds out that her dad got a paper cut? My father's sins and paper cuts are my own. Like, oh God. So that's the funniest part, is like, I hate Domon at the beginning, but I love him near the end. And then I go through this weird arc with Rain. I'm like, I hate her, and then I really like her, and then I hate her again. So it's frustrating. But okay, so we've gone through the main characters and their romance. We would feel like it's a legit romance, right? It builds up naturally.
Yeah.
Let's get into the side characters at least a little bit, because I know we've spent the better part of an hour talking Domon and Rain. So let's kind of quickly go over all of the Shuffle Alliance members, starting with Jiminy Crockett and his 4 moms.
Chibity was an okay character, you know. I mean, at least, but I can't deal with the girls as much because they were just
They're kind of the one flaw in there, aren't they?
He just kind of treats them like they're the most important thing.
They're window dressing until they're important. They are 4 different versions of Rain at the end of the show, except they're that way the entire show.
At least he had at least an interesting backstory.
Because they don't even really show... Like, I get it. Near the end, they're all hugging him, right? He doesn't have any romantic attachment with any of them. So why are they there again?
At least Chibity had an interesting backstory.
I mean, they literally are kind of his moms. They're going off and getting food for him. They're going off and setting things up for him. Like, they're doing all these things for him so that he can sit there and look like America's dream.
And heck, they're even doing something really stupid for him.
So, yeah. What I'm basically saying is Chibity is kind of the making fun of American misogyny in the fact that he's just like, I'm not going to do any of this. Go make me a sandwich. Because it's one of the main reasons I cannot attach to Chibity as a character. Even as a rival. I don't even think he's a rival to Domon.
But I do like it when he's kind of like hitting on Rain and trying to act like best buddies to Domon occasionally here and there.
I can't deal with any of it because it's just like you have not done, in my opinion, this series has not done enough to establish a legit rivalry with Chibity Crockett. Okay? And here's the example that I'm going to give. When Yugi beat Kaiba in Yu-Gi-Oh, like, Yugi was up against the wall, and through some sheer concept of luck, he beat the world champion. And then at that point, it was a rivalry because Kaiba had never been beaten before. So at that point, he had something to prove. But Yugi always had something to prove against Kaiba. Because even though he was declared the king of games and he beat Pegasus and all that, he was always considered inferior to Kaiba, and he always wanted to prove that wrong. Simply because of Kaiba's beliefs being so at odds with his. Chibity's never that. Like, yes, Chibity loses to Domon, but it's not like an impacted fight. It's over pretty damn fast. And they never ever recovered any momentum as far as I'm concerned with making him a rival. That's going to go to another character that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But to me, like, kind of like another character that we're going to get into, Chibity is window dressing. Mm-hmm. He is window dressing in the form of a rival with finger quotes. Okay, he's not really even a rival. He's just painted as one.
He just seems kind of like the typical.
Even in his own episodes, he feels like window dressing. What? We were being tagged by that assassin? Kind of thing, and that's all he ever meant. He never felt like a threat to Domon or even remotely like a rival to him. So, any other thoughts that we want to add on this? Do we want to add anything on the girls? I don't think there's enough. They're bikini girls. That's what they are.
The only thing annoying was when the girls decided to go off and do that whole mission of going after Domon that drove. And it was just annoying when he's like, they're my 4 mommies.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
They're probably younger than you.
They're my 4 mommies who emasculated me via a Dear John letter. Mm-hmm. But if you read the subcontext of it, it's like, we're going to be in trouble in like 20 minutes. Come rescue us. So I think we pretty much hands downed on Chibity. Let's get into George. The Dark George Rises. The failure of a Bruce Wayne character that is George Desand. At no point am I invested in George in this entire series. I should be, because I like the concept of being a knight and the aspect that George kind of goes, which is like chivalry isn't dead. And he just drives me crazy because there's so many contradictions to that statement within this one character. Like, I mean, the perfect example is how he even got to be Neo France's Gundam fighter in the first place. He wasn't responsible for all those deaths, but yet he held himself responsible. It's like, okay, Bruce, calm down. Let Alfred tell you that you're not responsible and that you can save the day. He is a badly written Batman, if you think about it. He's a very badly written Batman. And you kind of like it through George Desand. I have seen the flaws in the Batman storyline. I have seen them all, and I appreciate Batman even better. I don't appreciate George. Final thoughts on George. Like, did he get better? Did he get worse?
He had his ups and downs, but
I would say he didn't change the entire series.
No, I think he just stayed the same character as we met him.
Yeah.
The only thing that drove me crazy about with him is the whole thing with Marie Louise, the relationship between the two. It just seems
or not relationship,
Yeah.
or the writers couldn't decide anymore.
Yeah, because she seems like she would be more like the little sister to him, not.
Yeah,
but she thinks like
she's the little sister with the crush, except he doesn't know how to
like
let her
she
down
thinks
easy.
that he is her knight in shiny armor, and yet it's like there should be an age difference between you two.
And there is. There's
and
a
yet
pretty big age gap.
he wants to treat her like she's like the perfect lady here. It's like, okay, go away.
Oh God. And it made it even worse when she at the end when she reached in to kiss him and then he got all blushed or he was all blushing.
I didn't think she kissed him. I thought she was hugging him.
I can't remember. It was either a hug or like a kiss on the cheek, but he was blushing. He's like, oh God, are you really trying to set up this 12-year-old girl with this 19-year-old guy? Just no, F that.
I mean, I get it that she is like the prime minister. I don't know what you call
she was the princess. She was
the princess of the what?
Yes, he was the king of Neo France.
Okay, I guess that's the title for.
Yeah, that's the title that they gave him.
That he would want to be
France.
respectful towards her, but
yeah, and it kind of feels like that's exactly what it was. He was keeping up appearances. He didn't really care about her, and I always kind of wonder every time I watch this, is like, George just doesn't want to let her down softly, does he? He can't do it.
And that just feels the weirdest thing about it's like, I get it that she's the princess, but it's like you feel like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's just that whole thing between those two.
Because here's the thing. With Chibity, you can say things changed.
Yeah.
Because you actually did see him overcome, like, legit issues. I would argue George never overcame anything.
The only thing that was really great about him was the whole thing where he's like, I want to just forget about all what they think about. I'm gonna go fight Domo.
Yeah, and that's the funniest aspect is like the one episode that we do like with him is when he drops all of the foundations of his character because he wants to fight Domo.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well now we kind of like you, except then he goes back to being the knight, and it's just like, I would actually dare say, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this, but I was going to go into like best Shuffle Alliance member and worst Shuffle Alliance member. My worst is George Desand. Like, F him. I can't deal with him. So let's get into a good one. Sai Shi. Final thoughts on Sai Shi.
He was a brat at first, pretty much.
Yep.
Annoying as crap.
Yep.
But strangely humorous in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And it was kind of really strange to actually see him when he's actually acting more mature. Yeah,
the funniest thing is like he is the only one that goes through, and we'll get to Argo. Argo's a different animal altogether, but Sai Shi is actually going through a coming of age arc throughout all of it. Because you're right, he is an annoying little fucking brat when you first meet him. I find him endearing because, you know, underneath all that spunk is an actual fighter. And so at that point, I mean, I like the concept of it. He is a kid who eventually grows up before your eyes, and into a very honorable man. I would dare
Young
say.
man.
Well, the purpose is that he goes from being a boy to a man. So that
True.
young man doesn't matter. You see him go there, and it makes sense as you go along, kind of thing. I especially think it was a good touch to not say he was an orphan at the beginning, because I think that would have hurt it. But when you did say he was an orphan and he didn't know his dad after he finds his dad's will, it means something. It means something because now this is a defining aspect of his character that's changing him.
And it's kind of nice to see an actual Gundam fighter, kind of more of a different age compared to like a lot of we see, you know?
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of them, they look like they're...
Well, the whole premise of it is actually kind of really well built. Is like you've seen the Olympics and you've seen the Chinese teams, right? The Chinese teams are always really, really stinking young because they're prodigies at that point. Then they just kind of get discarded by the system. And so they kind of went into that stereotype and said, okay, well, he has to be like this child prodigy of martial arts. And it worked. Strangely enough, it worked. Like I can't watch the Chinese team at most Olympics because just like they are so thin and frail. I'm afraid that like all you have to do is for the wind to blow the wrong way and they break their arm, kind of thing. And for Sai Saishi, it doesn't feel that way. He still feels like he feels like a threat to Domon, and he always continues to feel like a threat to Domon.
Yeah, and him challenging Argo, it's kind of like, are you just trying and people?
I find that endearing because it's another point where like his immaturity is showing, and strangely through that fight, he gains a little bit of maturity out of it. Like you actually do see him learn lessons in front of you, and it's cool to see. So like I find that aspect endearing. Sorry, I cut you off, but like I find that endearing about him.
Well, I'm just saying that, you know, he just thinks he's just really cocky and wanting to take things bigger than him and thinking he's like absolutely gonna win, and then realizes, no, I guess I kind of.
But also comes to a realization that sometimes you do have to fight big opponents.
Mm-hmm. You have to be smarter on how to fight bigger opponents.
Well, not necessarily smarter, yes, but you have to go towards your own strengths.
Oh yeah,
kind of thing. So one of the biggest strengths is you have the speed advantage. They don't. And so Sai Saishi kind of enables that. I also like the fact they also built a lot of Shaolin kind of lore into him. Again, one of my favorite episodes of Sai Saishi is when he faced Mummy Gundam and how he kind of prayed for Dahal's soul to be at peace. Because at that point, like, they haven't really shown much American values in Chibity. I get it. He's the American dream, but he's not really living up to American values. George never felt like that. In fact, the more I learned about George, the more I realized I never wanted to live in Neo France because probably everybody has a giant stick up their ass. Sai Saishi felt like, yes, he did grow up with Shaolin teachings and that you should respect those who are in torment, even if it's spiritual torment. And you could tell his upbringing through his actions. And I love that about him. I think he's really well built in that regard. I especially love that his first love just came out of nowhere, and unfortunately, she was just kind of a fling. I mean, I hope in the non-existing 14th Gundam fight he got to see Cecile again, but we never got that resolution. We never did. So I'm also going to go ahead and spoil this. My best Shuffle Alliance member is Sai Saishi. I think he is the one that I was at least more excited to see on the screen because either you were going to get something funny or you were going to get something fairly profound out of him. But yeah, final thoughts on anything you want to add on Sai Saishi?
Nope.
Let's get into Argo then. Final thoughts on Argo Gulski.
He's pretty much the...
Your final thoughts on Argo Gulski is that you have no thoughts. Good, you are like Argo. You do not like to talk. You like to go look for pretty flowers.
I don't know what I could say about him except, just
Argo's a strange case. Like where one of our bigger arguments with George is that nothing happened to him. You could argue Argo, nothing ever happened to him.
He's just like
but nothing needed to happen to him.
I know, he's just the big, strong, silent type, unless he's got something he really has to...
Well, you always kind of got the feeling like he's seen some shit in his life. And so at that point, like, he's understanding, but you don't need to have him go through that learning arc like you would say Saisaishi has to go through. He knows about life, but you don't need to have that reaction from him, because you know through his eyes that he's been through it and he knows how to handle it. But the cool part is that he is kind of a strong but silent type. When he needs to speak, he will. When he needs to, and when he does say something, he's being honest with you.
And it seems like kind of almost seems like he gives that word of wisdom.
Yeah, like they go out of their way to paint him to be this hardened prisoner, this hardened a-hole. But in the end, Argo is just kind of a gentle giant. He's not a hardened prisoner. He's not the hardened pirate that everybody makes him out to be. He is a gentle soul that just so happens to be in a big lumbering ox of a body. And one of the things, I kind of want to bring this up because we kind of skipped Zuisen and Keiun, but I kind of wanted to, because here's the thing. With Chibity's girls and with George's butler and Marie Louise, they feel like window dressing to these already window dressing characters. But that's not the case when it comes to Zuisen, Keiun, and Nastasha. They actually feel like characters that these individuals can bounce off of. And in Argo's case, it's really helped by Nastasha. Nastasha kind of is the way that we know a lot of Argo's feelings, because she's explaining like, this is what Argo would not like. And it's not done to a point of like, okay, well then why can't Argo just say that himself? It's more along the lines of, okay, you understand him in a weird way, and we can totally get that kind of deal. And the same thing for Zuisen and Keiun. Well, not the same thing, but when Saisaishi was confronted with an issue that maybe he'd never dealt with, that's when Zuisen and Keiun would come out and say like, okay, and they most of the time they do it in a comedic way of like, oh, Saisaishi does not know how to deal with puberty. The Shaolin Temple will truly be ruined. Like that's how they would usually handle it, but they felt like a really good foil to him, because when he was being serious, they were being silly. When he was being silly, they were being serious. And it always worked out for Saisaishi's betterment, kind of thing. It's one of the reasons why I go with like My Two Dads, is because it really does kind of feel like he's learning through his dad's stupidity. So like I was saying so sorry guys, but we're dealing with parenting issues while we're recording this, where you did have like maturity things happening with Zuisen and Keiun for Saisaishi. For Nastasha, it was more like, okay, we're going to find a way to be able to explain why this is a conflict to Argo. And through their relationship that I would say kind of blossomed in this series, you got to learn a little bit more about Argo in a weird way through his files and through Nastasha's personal observations of him. Because this guy he doesn't say a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
He just kind of keeps things to himself, and it's frustrating in a way, because like that there's probably a lot of good storytelling behind it, but it's necessary because he's supposed to be the hardened Russian prisoner kind of thing. Am I wrong in any of that assessment? Like a lot of who Argo is told to you through Nastasha.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Okay, so at that point, what do you think of Argo? Like, final thoughts on Argo overall?
Not a whole lot.
Like, would we say that he's bad in the same case as George, where George didn't really change? Because Argo didn't really change either.
No, but there wasn't much to tell on him except, he's just what you've learned about him.
Where George needed change, Argo really didn't. And I actually would say that that's a strength for him, and you did get to see some changes within him, but they weren't like huge altering moments. It was just you got to see a little bit more of the layers get pulled back and appreciate Argo.
He just looked like that intimidating person that you don't want to come across, but actually when you get to know him and when he
Gentle
became,
giant, yeah.
And when he became a Shuffle Alliance, he seemed to be like someone who is really dependable when you need him.
Yeah.
In circumstances.
Even though, like, if Argo's kind of a perfect example of don't judge a book by its cover, because you would think he would be the most irresponsible. But no, he actually is kind of the most responsible. What did you think about his friendship with Domon? What there was that we got to see of it? Because
I think
they were a lot of those moments were very fleeting. I would actually say we got more Chibity and Saisaishi friendship moments than we did with Argo.
I just think, surprisingly, I think like out of all the Shuffle Alliance, I think Domon was kind of like the type of person that actually kind of got along with Argo to some extent, through some communication wise.
Mm.
Like to go for some advice that he did not know what he can do for certain circumstances. And
So at that point, I've already kind of given these away, but who, Andrea, would you consider to be the best Shuffle Alliance member, and who would you consider to be the worst?
Probably the same as you, basically. Saisaishi may be my favorite.
I'm a little surprised by that, because I think Chibity annoyed you more. Like, at least I always saw visible annoyance when it came to Chibity compared to George. Because, there were a couple times where I swear Chibity would come up on screen and you'd be like, and you didn't do that with George. So I'm kind of surprised that George is the worst to you. Whereas it sounded like you had some legit beefs with Chibity.
Well, probably because the whole Maria Louise thing just drove me crazy.
She just drives you nuts, doesn't she?
Yeah. But I think at least with Chibity, you have some interesting story to him.
So everybody can take this as an example. Andrea hates pretty princesses. She just hates them. Absolutely hates them. You are totally princessist.
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of gone into a lot of the main and supporting main characters. But I think also another thing that kind of needs to go into, and I want to go in from the perspective that we were presented them, most of it was the villains. All right. So technically there are 2 to 3 villains, 3 to 4 that we can talk about. And some got lots of development, some didn't so much. So I'm going to try and couple these with one who got very little development and one who got a lot of development. And the first one that I want to get into is the guy who was there the entire time, but got very little development, Major Ulube. So Major Ulube tended, or technically was the final villain of the series. And nobody really knew or cared, because a lot of his scenes are like he's chewing the scenery. He's being the passive guy. And then eventually, we have that heel turn happen, and it's just kind of not worth it. What were your thoughts on Major Ulube at the beginning of the series? And then go into your thoughts at the end when he actually did heel turn and he became kind of a comical villain.
Well, I wouldn't say he was a comical villain.
Oh, I think he is.
Not compared to our other guy, Wong, but
I think he is, just because it's brought on so last minute that it's just I can't take this seriously.
At the beginning,
I mean, for crying out loud, the DG cells made him look like a goblin.
True. But at the beginning, it just seemed like he was just another representative of, Japan.
Very passive guy.
Why would you worry about anything with that?
Mm-hmm.
But towards the end, at least it was he was interesting to be a villain.
Yep.
It made more sense than having like Master Asia, but
well, and we'll get into him in a little bit, but Major Ulube, in my opinion, has a laughable problem that I've seen in another Gundam series called Gundam Seed. There was a villain by the name of Raul Lacruce, who he is the masked villain of that series, and up until that point, he is kind of throughout the series, he is kind of this inspiring villain, where he inspires his troops, and he's very calm, cool, collected, and so you could tell like something's going on with him. But near the end of the series, I want to say the last 10 episodes, it feels like he went off his meds to such an nth degree that he is just mad. He is all kinds of crazy. And so at that point, it always made me feel bad for him because he got the last 10 episodes happening to him where he's just stark raving crazy. I felt bad for Raul. I don't feel bad for Ulube because they didn't do anything with him. I don't even want to call him a masked character because there are other masked characters in the Gundam lore that have gotten way more screen time than Ulube. And Ulube just didn't get any of that. And when they finally did do the madness turn for him, it's laughable because he's like, I get it that they tried to say like, well, now he has Wong's research, so now he knows. But then they just make him out to be like, he's basically butthurt that he didn't win his Gundam fight. He lost to Master Asia, and because he's no longer considered the fighting genius, he wants to take over the universe. Like, how petty can you get?
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, like, I would actually dare say that I don't even think you can say there was character development with him, because the most development you get is when the Dark Gundam first rose, he got injured. That's why he has the mask. And then, like that forever kind of dominates him. Like he doesn't want, like you kind of get the feeling of maybe he was an aggressive military officer and that kind of tempered him a little bit, except then you have the last bit heel turn. And it's like, well, he was never tempered to begin with. He held it all in reserve, I guess.
Well, yeah, but that's
on top of going off of his meds.
Yeah, but that was kind of one of those things where you're like, well, it's like you can't trust the quiet ones because I mean, it was pretty cool though to have like a person who you thought was on the good side and all of a sudden does a 180 turn and you're like, what the heck?
Okay. And then the other thing that we're going to do with these is we're going to rank the villains on who was best and who was worst. So at this point, Ulube isn't contending with anybody, not until we bring others in there, and then we'll start contending them and doing a list. But there's not really much to add to Ulube other than, it was just weird how he came into being the villain, and it was weird how he left. So let's get into one that got a lot more development and was there for probably an equal amount of time, Kyoji Kashu / Schwartz Bruder. So I'm gonna say Schwartz because we know those moments him as Schwartz, but Kyoji is part of that whole aspect. So the first thing I want to ask with Kyoji is, did you buy him as the villain with all of the way he was portrayed at the beginning of the series? Was he this monster that everybody was painting him out to be, or did the picture kind of make you think like maybe there's more to this?
I would think there would have been more to it.
Because the picture kind of makes you think like, oh, well, he looks like he might care. But like there is such a heavy-handed concept of he's the mastermind and he's the one that sent the Dark Gundam to Earth so that he could destroy the planet.
And yet you wonder,
and he'll eat your children and puppies. and all that.
And yet there was very, very, very little contact between him and Domon.
And every time you saw him, he looked kind of aloof or sad.
It just seems like they're...
What I mean is, like, in that illusion, he was like, I'm so evil, I will eat your puppies, kind of thing. But then every time you saw him after that, he was just like, huh, I guess it's gonna rain today. You know, like, he had that look of him. And so at that point, it's like, huh, he is not half as evil as people are making him out to be.
Well, yeah, and I'm just saying that he didn't make very many appearances compared to any other villain. So it's like, okay, then there's something not right about him.
Okay.
But yet, I don't think he...
So, like, were you bought hook, line, and sinker into this guy's the villain, Domon must beat him in that?
I didn't think he seemed like
Okay.
the villain that, you know, it just didn't seem like he was like the all-time villain.
Did he do anything to make you change your opinion on that?
No, not really.
Because to me, he always looked like, I don't know how to explain it other than in every viewing, he looks childlike to me. Because again, he just kind of has that aloof look in his eye of, oh, it might rain. If a butterfly came near him, I'm pretty sure he'd be like, ooh, you know, like, because that would take up his attention. And I get it. They want to paint him as, you know, like this core, he's the core life unit of the Dark Gundam. And this thing is, unwillingly like stealing his life essence to be able to make more soldiers and all that. But like, he's not painted as evil in the slightest. When he's next to the Dark Gundam, even when the Dark Gundam is building itself, he's not like, he doesn't have like that evil grin or anything like that. Like, his plans are coming to fruition. He just always looks tired, aloof, not sure where he is at that given moment. I actually thought during one of my viewings, like, the Dark Gundam lobotomized him because he just doesn't show any emotion or, like, you know, maybe part of the energy sucking thing is that it takes your brain power. I don't know. Because he just didn't seem like he was with it to begin with. And so it's hard to kind of paint him as the villain. The Dark Gundam doesn't have that problem because, you know, it's already got things that'll frighten you, but its pilot isn't frightening, kind of thing, is what I'm kind of pointing out. And so then we have the introduction of Schwartz, who is the antithesis of everything we've been shown about Kyoji up to that point. He is a caring mentor figure. I still suspect that Kyoji had some martial arts training somewhere. I don't think he learned from Master Asia. I think the inclination that a lot of people are saying is like and I've seen this theorized, is that he is he is technically the first pupil of Master Asia. And that's how Domon knows to go to Master Asia, is through Kyoji. I don't know if I buy that, but it's very clear he's received some kind of martial arts training. I even think Dr. Koshu did too, because they're both very calm, cool, and disciplined in that right. And so at that point, and that's kind of the interesting aspect, is that Schwartz brings to the table the actual aspect of martial arts, which is learning discipline within yourself, which Domon is seriously lacking through a lot of this series.
Yeah.
So at that point, like, what was your initial thoughts about Schwartz when you saw him for the first time?
Probably when I first saw him, he was just some
Did you question why there was a focus on him at any point during his tenure? Like, we already have the Shuffle Alliance members. Why do we need this weird sixth member? Wow, I didn't even think about it. Schwartz is the Tommy of this Power Rangers unit.
Well, he is like the person you'd be like, why?
No, he literally is the Tommy, because he is very beloved. So,
well, you're kind of questioning why would someone from another colony, you know, who's representing Germany, just all of a sudden want to care so much about Domon and try and
why was their representative from Neo Germany so ninja-like?
I don't know, but it was just like you first question, like why does he even care? He should be focusing on the tournament and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like,
but yet he's invested in the Dark Gundam. And they never really even remotely hint that maybe Neo Germany is investigating the Dark Gundam. So it's just like, okay, so how does he know about it? Because we know that no other nation knew about it, but he knows a lot.
yeah.
So I don't know. There's a lot of weirdness to Schwartz's character at the beginning. And thankfully, like, Gianna helps a lot with it because you start to see him in that supporting role, but you're still kind of questioning why he's in that supporting role.
But I'm pretty sure even the original Schwartz wouldn't even know about.
No, I think Schwartz wouldn't have given two craps about the Dark Gundam. He would have been like Chapman or any other veteran Gundam fighter that we've seen. He would have had his eye on the prize, so to speak. And so at that point, it's like, you know, that's the way it is. But then this Schwartz kind of changed that aspect of it. What did you think of Schwartz slowly coming into kind of a mentor role for Domon during Gianna?
I thought it was pretty nice, really. You know, just like
were you bought like full bore, like, let's go, I like this guy as a mentor figure for Domon, or were you just like, why are we going down this line, not with somebody else like with Chibity, but instead with this unknown guy?
I just don't see like any of these Shuffle Alliance members acting like as some kind of a mentor to Domon, regardless.
No, they had to be rivals. I mean, maybe Argo, because Argo, you know, he's lived a long time, he's been through some shit, but Schwartz definitely was kind of a left hook out of nowhere.
But it was because I think it was really, you know, with, you know, Master Asia all of a sudden stopped becoming like a mentor and even a friend to Domon because of...
Yeah.
I think Domon probably felt like alone in this whole fight against the Dark Gundam when he thought he could have had even Master Asia.
Let me share an initial theory about Schwartz with you and see if you could have bought it if you'd seen it. Because I know you had your theory, and we've already confirmed that you did, that you got it right. Good job. Mm-hmm. One of my initial theories for him was that he wasn't necessarily related to Domon. He was more related to the Shuffle Alliance. Like, maybe he was a pupil of one of the other members, and he understood what the Shuffle Alliance was, and since this new Shuffle Alliance didn't really get that concept, he came in to try and teach them what the Shuffle Alliance is all about. Like, even like he was, you know, I hate to go down the Power Rangers route, but he was like the hidden sixth member, and he knew what the Shuffle Alliance was about, and so he had to come in and teach them, kind of thing. Because that's always how I looked at him. He's like, he wasn't necessarily a mentor figure in the beginning. He was just like, he understood what the Shuffle Alliance was all about. And so he was like the story's way of trying to get people to, or get the new members to adopt to the old philosophies, kind of thing. Would you have agreed with that, or do you think, would you have just stuck with the theory that you initially had?
Well, if they didn't go the route that they did, that would have been a good possible theory. Because I mean, after all, if the Dark Gundam needed to be stopped, the Shuffle Alliance needed to get together and you know, get stronger and work as a team and all that stuff.
Because it wasn't just that he was a mentor to Domon; he tried to be a mentor to the other four too. Mm-hmm. So at that point, so going past Gianna, he doesn't really get a focus in the finals. He gets to be the one who discovers the Dark Gundam and kind of sets Wong on his warpath, but he's kind of forgotten through a lot of that. In fact, like, geez, how many fights do we actually see him go through? The only one that's coming to mind is his Neo-Norway fight with Viking Gundam, but then he's just kind of forgotten overall. Like, occasionally he comes back to, you know, throw in a moral here or there, but he's mostly forgotten. You're giggling at me like I'm wrong.
No,
like, I can't help but wonder if he was just kind of forgotten throughout that time.
He was only there up until the point where he was facing against Domon.
Yeah, he like at that point he had one purpose. He had to have his face reveal to Domon, which had been heavily hinted at by Master that he was not who we thought he might be. Kind of thing, because like you kind of bought it head on where a lot of people didn't. Of Master Asia thought he was Kyoji, because I've even seen a lot of people saying like, no, he knew he was somebody from Master Asia's past or something like that, or he was an apprentice of the Shuffle Alliance kind of thing. But after that reveal, that's where Kyoji kind of gets weird and twisted. Because it's Kyoji, but it's not Kyoji. It's a reflection, but it's not a reflection. Yeah. Like, what's going through your mind when all of that reveal is happening?
It's like just
when he's in the hospital bed, or when he's talking to Domon and he's saying like, this is what really happened.
Well, he wasn't talking to Domon in the hospital.
No, he did both. In the hospital, he talked to Dr. Mikamura and Rain.
Yeah.
But then he also did an exposition dump for Domon.
Yeah, but that was on the field.
Yeah, that was on Lantau.
Yeah.
So at that point, like, what's going through your mind when you're just like, oh God, they're just using him to tell the story up until this point and to justify why Kyoji's not a villain, kind of thing.
Well, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that.
I did a little bit, but only in the aspect of, man, you could have built up a lot of lacking confidence in Kyoji as the villain up until this point, and it would have been a lot more believable. But from a storytelling perspective, it's forced in the aspect of we have to learn all of it through like 2 to 3 episodes of dialogue for him to explain all of it. And even then, it's not properly explained. Like, how did this is one thing that I have a problem with Schwartz's story. How did the Dark Gundam cells change, not only kill Schwartz, but change his appearance to look like Kyoji? Like, even I can buy the Dark Gundam cells can do a lot of things. I can buy that they're like little nanomachines. I can't buy that they would be able to change the structure and makeup of your body to be someone else.
I don't know.
Like, you don't find that far-fetched?
Well, I guess you just have to. It's plot convenience.
Not only that, but like reverse the clock, because Schwartz is pretty old. And then all of a sudden he's back to his roaring 20s. Man, those nanomachines are great. They're the fountain of youth, baby. It's like there's a lot of problems with the science here. And also, what did you think of all the moments of when Rain or Domo would have a quiet moment with him, and they all of a sudden they're going into this inner monologue of like, he feels so warm and
he feels
caring,
so familiar.
and he feels so familiar. Why does he feel that way? I'll tell you, when I first watched this, I was like, shut up, we get it.
It's strange, but
is that what kind of helped your theory that it was Kyoji?
Well, that was kind of part of it, but
Well, explain the process then.
it just
You got it spot on. I never did. So I'm very curious as to why you came to the conclusions you did.
Well, just because of what you learned of the relationship between, Kyoji and Domon. It's like there's got to be more to what's going on, and you wonder if the Dark Gundam is just, using Kyoji as like it's like a puppet or something. It's like, okay, so Kyoji can't be that bad, and then yet you have this random person who decides to go out of his way to go help Domon and the Shuffle Alliance. It's like, okay, there's got to be something more to this guy than just some random stranger.
And then when he died, like, what went through your head when you'd heard all of what Kyoji had gone through up until that point? Did you still want him to see him live, or were you okay? Like, was it a mercy that Domon killed him at that point, or did you still want to see him live?
I probably would have wanted to see him live, but I know there was probably a possibility that that wouldn't be the case. And it's like, you know what?
See, when I watched that the first time and I had it all explained to me, it's just like, so what you're basically telling me is that for the last year, Kyoji has woken up and gone to sleep in excruciating pain. Mm-hmm. Because this Gundam is forcing every last ounce of energy that he has into it. Mm-hmm. And this is how he lives. And then, you know, through one of his last bits of strength, he sends out a copy of himself to give him a fitting end. Mm-hmm. And he then thinks he's going to get it, but then he doesn't, and he has to live through that pain. So not only did he have the daily pain, but now he has the pain from the first Guyana attack that's holding him back. I kind of felt like it was a mercy because I tried to put myself in Kyoji's shoes, and it wasn't a pleasant place that I went to. Mm-hmm. Where he's just like, he's in pain all the time, and he can't do anything. He's basically a slave to this machine. Mm-hmm. I thought of it as like and I still love that moment where you kind of see them come together and say their final goodbye to Domo. And it's still it still brings a tear to my eye because you kind of feel like, you know, it sucks that we have this really cool character that we could have in the wings, but you feel good for him because his year of torment is over.
Oh yeah. Kind
of thing. But no, you still think he could have been kept alive. How so?
Well, like I said.
So you wanted Domon to go into the cockpit, pull him out, and try to heal him?
Well, maybe...
and then destroy the Dark Gundam?
Well, even if you couldn't do it that way, I'm kind of still surprised, but I'm pretty sure we'll get to that later on.
Well, no, but by all means, get to it.
I'm just saying, like, you know, if Kyoji wasn't a pick to be the life core of the Gundam, mm-hmm. and he was no further use, he could have maybe possibly have survived.
All right.
Long enough to go and help his brother, you know, take out the Dark Gundam later on, you know, mm-hmm. because apparently it does not require a male to do so.
No, it requires a woman.
Because then it's like, okay.
And this was just a cheap excuse to have tentacles around a woman.
And then so Domon had no choice but to take.
I've got to ask this question honestly. Does watching anime just make you just like absolutely afraid of tentacles at this point? I'm asking seriously. I'm not asking jokingly.
I don't know.
Okay.
If it would or no.
So let's moving away from Kyoji, because I think we've kind of hit the points here. Mm-hmm. Let's move into the next one that doesn't have a whole lot to him, because he's pretty much a villain through one arc, and that is our buddy Wong Yunfa, who I think a lot of people have a love for because he is what the villain that this series needed, but didn't ultimately get. Mm-hmm. Because he is a petty politician who wants to remain in power and is willing to do everything in his power to stay that way. And not only that, but when you get handed like this ultimate guaranteed you'll be the ruler of space card, of course you utilize the fuck out of it. And that would be like when he found out about the Dark Gundam. Wong to me is... He's definitely a lot more serious than Ulube. But because of his pettiness, because of the fact that he just it's very clear he's a politician who wants to remain in power. It's kind of hard to take him seriously either, because you know his motivations and you know what they will ultimately end up doing to him. You know, making him a slave to the Dark Gundam, including his little DG cell glasses. Mm-hmm. That's still a nice touch. Like, what did you... Final thoughts on Wong Yunfa?
I think...
Is he the villain that this series deserved?
I think he was a great candidate to be a villain. Mm-hmm. Although I think...
Oh, really quick, to keep your thought, we forgot to rank Kyoji. Will we rank Kyoji higher or lower than Ulube in the villain list? Like, is he a better villain than Ulube, or is he a worse villain?
He would have been lower.
He would have been lower to me because he feels more like a good guy kind of thing.
Well, just because he didn't seem like...
In concept of being a villain, I mean, there was a lot more to Kyoji than there was, like, into how Domon was looking at Kyoji compared to Ulube. But in reality, those were Domon's assumptions. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I would put him lower than Ulube. But trust me, when it comes to, like, being a villain, Ulube is the lowest. Because, I mean, at least with the evil propaganda Kyoji, like, there was a reason to hate that bastard. But Ulube is just like, oh, well, you're just a petty dude who's mad because he's not the fighting genius anymore. Sorry. So both of us are putting Kyoji below Ulube in terms of villain. All right. So sorry. Go ahead and continue your thoughts with Wong.
Okay, now I gotta think of it because you interrupted.
So I'm trying to remember where you were at. Oh no, you think he was a good villain because he was painted that way.
Well, yeah, he was like he would have been a great villain. However, I think he just didn't execute it the way I intended. It's
you don't think he was executed properly?
Well, because I mean, his main ideal goal is to just remain as the ruler of all space and all that stuff. But yet, I think his ego kind of kept him from achieving that goal. And so Ulube's like, well, if you're not going to do it, then I'm going to just finish it for you.
Mm-hmm. See, that's kind of, in my opinion, Wong's flaw is he's so readable. He's so predictable as a villain because he's got he checks everything off the list that it almost makes you think like, okay, yeah, he can't possibly be the end villain of this thing because he just fits it too well in a weird way. I mean, I liked when they did that. I especially loved when him and Master were at odds. Because then you could tell, like, okay, there is a philosophy here. Domon, like, Master did want to test Domon, but Wong just wanted to remain in power. And so at that point, like, he didn't care about making Domon stronger. He cared about, okay, my tenure as ruler of all space is going to end in this many days, except I can elongate it because I have this. So why wouldn't I go down that road? I also think it was kind of weird and tacked on to basically make him more of an antagonist towards Allenby than anything else because of his theory that you needed a woman. I think that would have been cooler to learn from Wong than from Wong's report. Like, if we actually knew, because at that point, like, the only assumption here that Wong was more interested in Allenby was because of the Berserker system. Mm-hmm. So at that point, okay, well then you could have just put Domon in there, but with a Berserker system. And they almost kind of make it sound like Wong's main infatuation here is just the Berserker system. Mm-hmm. How it brings out fighters' latent abilities. So it almost feels like, yeah, him and Master could have come to conclusions or who could come to a compromise. Okay, you get the Berserker system, I'll get Domon. Got it. Kind of thing. That way we have the best possible candidate. But no, he was fixated on Allenby. I mean, obviously, because we saw him kidnap her and then put her in a pod right next to the Dark Gundam, all evil like. I mean, yeah, Wong is a weird character. Because he's just as petty as everybody would imagine him to be, but then they also kind of give him that potential of, yeah, he's also just like this genius who could figure out what the Dark Gundam's true purpose was meant to be. I don't know. I would say he's a better villain than Ulube, though. Because at least at that point, he makes sense in being a villain. Because at that point, I would say, like, you know, they're both petty, but I would say Ulube's more petty. For dumber reasons. Mm-hmm. At least Wong's reasoning makes sense. Anything you want to add to that?
I think this is just the one thing that we both were kind of questioning is why, you know, if
Why was Wong put into that place?
Well, I'm just saying, why did Wong find out about needing to use a female to run the Dark
how did
Gundam?
you know that?
Because it would make more sense to come from Ulube, because the Dark...
Because at that point, he wouldn't have known anything about that. Like, they made it sound like Wong had all of Dr. Kashi's notes and he moved forward from it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It
would have been better if Ulube just kind of combined what he learned from Wong's assumptions and then went, oh, I see what Wong was thinking. Let's try that.
Well, no, I'm just saying it probably would have been more reasonable to say, well, the Dark Gundam originally came from Neo Japan.
Yes.
So, and Ulube is a person who represents Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have found out more of that research from Dr.
Well,
Kashi.
he would have had that research.
He would have had it, and I'm pretty sure...
Because you know that as soon as they raided the lab, they confiscated everything.
Yeah, so it's like, unless, of course, Wong decided to infiltrate Neo Japan somehow to find that out before even Ulube did.
I don't think he would have cared.
I think it would have been a lot
because
more...
when he wasn't trying to stay in power, he was the playboy.
But I would say, maybe he would have preferred to use Allenby because of the Berserker system, but not from the research of needing a woman, period.
Just because the Berserker system was built around
because he thought maybe Domon would be unable to be controlled regardless of whether, so he thought maybe I have better chance of controlling Allenby through the Berserker and using it to run. And yet, why, if he knew about that in the first place, why didn't he just freaking threw Allenby in there and he could have started the whole thing in the first place? He could have had the Gundam to...
I mean, for crying out loud, at least like make him look like a conceited, what are the words I'm looking for? Sadistic. At least make him look sadistic. Like, I mean, okay, you're not gonna like that I'm painting it this way, but at least it would have painted him as a villain instead of having Allenby in a pod. Like, maybe instead, like, have her on an operating table and her fight suit is just rendered, like, it covers up the naughty bits, but it's just like torn to pieces. And part of that is because they're putting all this equipment on her to totally understand it. And then as a torture device, they basically just, like, in order to get what he wants, he turns on the Berserker system to get that, and then until he gets compliance from Allenby, kind of thing. So that way, like, and granted, a lot of people are going to argue, oh, so you want to just objectify Allenby? No, but I want him to do it, because this series is having a very difficult time trying to paint him as thinking of Allenby as nothing more than a piece of meat. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't have her as like one of his personal attendants by the end of it, because that's how Wong is. Like, that's the character that we're assuming he is. Like, it would have been really interesting if all of a sudden he went down to like an apartment or whatever. She's got like this crown thing that keeps the Berserker system going on her, and she's like mind control, but she's in some like maid's outfit kind of thing, because at least he would look more sadistic than he actually did. Most of the time what we saw with Wong is that he's petty. He's just a petty individual. And that's where in a lot of cases they could have improved, and he might have actually been the villain that we wanted him to be.
Oh yeah, and especially it would have probably been a better reveal if
Like if he had made Allenby his personal hot tub slave or something like that, he would have looked a lot. Am I wrong?
No.
He would have looked absolutely evil. And at that point, it would also accomplish the goal of Allenby is nothing to him, other than just just a pair of boobs and also the one that's going to run my trump card, kind of thing. And it would have been exactly what they needed to do with Wong, but they didn't do it. He was just petty politician.
I know, he was just trying to...
I would actually dare say Palpatine is more sadistic than Wong.
I think he pretty much had everything he needed to be able to get what he wanted, but he kind of let that slip under him because of... Ulube.
I'm getting like really weird looks from Andrea right now that I've painted that scene. I'm just saying that would have made him look a lot more evil.
Because I think that would have been 10 times better if Ulube's like, saying, well, I knew the truth of how this Gundam needed to be able to work properly was because it needed a woman, and you didn't need to rely on somebody else, especially who's not even from Japan.
Exactly.
To get that information, because it just didn't seem like that was the reason to fit.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's pretty safe to say we would both put Wong above Ulube. So let's get into the other one, which I also have a problem calling a villain. I think he's more of an antagonist in Master Asia. I would actually say that Master Asia is probably the best villain to follow in this entire series because he filled all the bombastic buttons promptly. But when he needed to be evil, he could be evil. And he could actually have those moments where he did look like he might have the upper hand. I have a lot of personal love for Master Asia. I really do. Because once you actually learn his story, it is sad. It is actually heartbreaking because you know that like fighting is part of who he is. And that part of who he is also basically at odds with his duty as the King of Hearts. So I love Master Asia as an antagonist, but I don't know if I would call him a villain because he does have kind of a Darth Vader kind of story to him. So like I kind of agree with you on Wong. Wong is the villain that this series kind of needed, but instead it got Master Asia, and Master Asia is more of an antagonist. He's more trying to push Domon than he is trying to overtake Domon. Mm-hmm. So final thoughts on Master Asia now that you have all of the resolutions with him.
Yeah, I would agree he was a pretty more of an antagonist.
Yep.
It was annoying just to see him bouncing back and forth. Like, are you trying to teach him or are you just trying,
make up your mind.
It's like, please stop it. You're making my head hurt.
Mm-hmm. I like that they started him up as the lovable grandpa, just kind of because when you did his eventual heel turn, yes, it's a little weird, but it's like, okay, so he's been playing everybody for fools. And now we get to see the actual undefeated of these, but then you wrecked it with the final round of him going and teaching Domon the Sekihaten Kyoken. It's like, seems like you had a clear advantage and you would have taken advantage of it.
It's like you were trying to beat Domon and yet you're teaching him stuff to help.
It makes about as much sense as Frieza teaching Goku the Death Beam. It doesn't.
It's like you're trying to set him up to make him win or something, and yet
yes, and we know the reason for that now. But
yeah, it just seems like that's strange.
It's a lot of his motivations are, and then at the last end of his life, we get to see the good old grandpa come back, but only for a few minutes until he finally passes away. It's like, I mean, here's the thing: I like the arc for Master Asia in this story. It is a Darth Vader kind of deal where he is intimidating. Like he started out good and then he became utter evil and then he ends good. And he ends in his pupil's arms. And so I like that concept because it is a perfect example of sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because that's all Master had. He wanted to make up for his past mistakes, and the Dark Gundam was the way to do it.
I still find it strange that if he was like the Gundam fighter for Neo Hong Kong, how is he ending up training Domon, who is from Neo Japan?
Well, what they kind of make it sound like is they only it's kind of like the presidential election for us. We only ever care about the presidential election in like that last year where they're doing the campaigning. And in this case, like people, I would not be surprised if people forget about the Gundam fighters for about 3 years. And then as soon as they start picking a new Gundam fighter, that's when they get invested.
Well, yeah, again. But it seems like, man, did Domon decide?
It's the Olympics, basically.
I mean, was Master Asia from Neo Hong Kong?
They kind of make it out to me that he was, yeah.
So did he travel to Neo Japan or something at one point, and that's how he met Domon?
See, this is one of those things I really wish they would have explained, is how did Domon find out about Master Asia?
Yeah, because I'm like...
And if you had actually gone with one of my theories, which was that the Kyoji was a pupil, wow, wouldn't it have been cool if he just referred, like, if we found out that Domon was like a very at-risk kid, and Kyoji just looked at him and went, no, you need to go train with my master and you'll appreciate him. But no, we never got that answer.
It's either that or Domon somehow managed to make his way all the way.
He just mysteriously, at 10 years old, decided, I'm not going to be a Pokemon master, mommy. I'm just going to go and learn martial arts. And he just came across Master Asia. Probably while he was being eaten by wolves. I don't know.
Who knows?
It is definitely one of those things I wish they would have explained.
It's just kind of be like, huh, okay.
And this is actually one of those things that gets me in trouble on Gundam forums a little bit. Because, like, you know, when people do discuss, like, if there should be a second season of G Gundam, I am not for it. And here's the reason why. I don't want the 14th Gundam fight. I want the 12th Gundam fight. I want a prequel series that follows Master Asia. Like, he is this great martial artist, and I want to see his realizations of what the Gundam fight was.
Yeah,
and I don't want it to just be the way that it is in the series. That's how that's how the Shuffle Alliance discovered it. I want to see him slowly kind of degenerate a little bit. And so I'm a little bit more interested in covering the 12th Gundam fight than I am the 14th. I don't need to see a grown-up Saishi hook up with Cecile. I kind of want... I don't need it, and I kind of don't want it. I want to see Master Asia slowly take that decline and become the villain. Does that make sense?
Or become the antagonist.
Yeah, I don't need, like, Anakin all the way from childhood. I want to, like, he's this prominent martial artist. He's decided to get into the Gundam fight because he wants to see if it actually solves the problem. And as he's going along, he starts to see other problems with it. And that's kind of what forms his philosophy and why he sides with the Dark Gundam. And I would find that a lot more interesting than going into the next tournament. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, am I right in that regard, or do you think it should be a 14th Gundam fight?
No, I think sometimes a prequel's nice to find out.
I mean, How Gundam is kind of not fun to follow, but I'd be okay with it. But that's kind of to get back to your training thing is like, I don't think anybody cared.
Yeah, I know.
And so he went off to Guyana, he went to go train, and he took Domon with him, and nobody cared until some journalist found out that Domon was his pupil, and that's when people cared. So would we rank Master Asia higher than Wong?
No.
I'd put him above Kyoji, because Kyoji is straight up a good guy.
Well, Kyoji kind of was, when you look at the list of villains or antagonists in this whole thing, I think it kind of painted more Kyoji now was more like the victim of the whole entire thing.
Yes. Whereas Master Asia was the antagonist. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a good guy, but he wasn't a bad guy either.
He just had his own thoughts of...
Yeah. He wasn't a bad guy. He was just
his own philosophies of how things should have...
Yeah.
And, you know...
And I love that character. Like, it's so freaking bombastic. Like, I know I make fun of the fact that he makes laundry a deadly weapon, but dude, he is exactly what you expect from those old school martial arts films. He is every stereotype of that. And it's fine. It works. It works because he is just that awesome. And that's why I love him as a character. But I'm going to go ahead and throw a fifth one in here. The reason I didn't want to do this one as a ranking is because there's not a whole lot to it. And that's the Dark Gundam itself. And here's the reason why I say there's not a whole lot to it. Is it was a machine that was programmed to do one thing, crashed on Earth, malfunctioned, and then became the Terminator, basically. And so at that point, can you really call that a villain?
It was just a malfunction robot.
Yeah. Can you really call that a villain? And I would argue no. You really can't do that. It became a tool of destruction, but it wasn't malevolent in its own right. And some people will argue, well, it used Kyoji for its own means. Well, yes, it did, but it wasn't meant to be able to do that. And if it didn't have a malfunction, it wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. But if you would see, this is why in a lot of cases I would determine that there are other better examples of this where you got to see a robot come to the conclusion that all humans were bad. This is just, oh, I hit my head, all humans are bad. And so it's kind of hard to call the Dark Gundam itself a villain. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, if it didn't run into Master Asia, it still would be struggling. It wouldn't have restored itself. It still would be struggling, I think. Because Kyoji was not giving it that much energy. It needed Master Asia. And so at that point, it's kind of hard to call the Dark Gundam itself a villain. Because it's a tool. It's a tool, pure, plain and simple. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you look like you disagree with me on that? No. Okay. Because I get that a lot of people say, like, well, it made the Dark Army. Yeah, it probably did that because Master Asia was teaching it to do that kind of thing. So at that point, it's kind of hard to call it a villain. But let's go ahead and get into the part that I know that Gundam fans want us to discuss, but you're kind of not into. Because, you're not into giant robots, which is the mecha aspect of it. And I'll keep this kind of short because I don't think there's a whole lot you want to add. But in a top 3 kind of sense, what were the best Gundams that you saw in the series? And with that, I don't want to say it just because it's good looking. Like, you've played RPGs, you've played video games, and you have a viewpoint of where you want to be in combat, whether it be to be the long-range fighter or the close-range fighter. When we're talking about this top 3, like, which one would fit how you would do things, kind of thing, if you were in the pilot seat, so to speak. So with that, I'll give you an example. My number 3 for this would actually be Raven Gundam. Raven Gundam is a really good looking Gundam, but also better fits the motifs of Mikkolo Chariot than Neros does. For crying out loud, its boot has a sword, like a blade sticking out of its foot. And that just accommodates his kicking style so well. And I love how it looks. I think it's an equally malevolent, but also a really cool design. And if I were in the pilot seat of that, I'd have a lot of fun just kicking the crap out of people and just tossing out those wing blades. So that would be my number 3 is Sword Raven Gundam. Who would be your number 3?
That depends, because I don't want to be like favoring one set over the other. But if it was,
should we have started from number 1 instead?
No, I would say if it was within the Shuffle Alliance, I would say 3 would be my.
Well, you're the one who's dictating it. So.
Okay. Well, if it was 3, 3 would probably be Bolt Gundam.
Okay, and why is that?
Just because of its awesome weaponry, and like.
Well, what specifically are you talking about? The Graviton Hammer or the Gaia Crusher?
The Graviton Hammer.
Okay, so you like the fact that it had like this swinging mace.
Yeah,
okay,
and just its sheer size.
It's a flail, basically.
Mm-hmm. I just think it was a pretty interesting Gundam.
Andrea's into flails.
What?
I never would have guessed that, considering who you like. Your main character in WoW is a rogue, and they're all daggers and swords. So.
And for anything outside of that, I would say maybe.
So Bolt Gun. So Bolt. You've given your reason for Bolt Gundam being your number 3. What would be the number 2 then?
Well, I was going for anything outside of the Shuffle Alliance.
You do it however you want.
Anything outside would probably be the Zeus Gundam.
Okay, now that one I want an explanation.
I don't know.
You've now picked 2 big, bulky Gundams. This is not what I would expect.
Well, because it has it has like a horse. It's like a horse chariot attached to it, and
Okay.
just some of the cool thunder motif.
Okay, so you like the thunder motif based around it. All right, gotcha. My number 2 would be Dragon Gundam, and it's simply because of how agile that thing is. If I'd actually seen Kiral's previous Gundam in action, I probably would have tied them. Because I like having faster, agile characters, aside from like solid protectors, in any of my arsenals. And so at that point, Dragon Gundam's kind of the fit in this one. He's moving around endlessly. He has lots of weapons at his arsenal, including freaking flamethrowers and extendable arms. He's everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. And I love the design of it. I think it fits a Chinese aesthetic very, very well. Yeah. My number 2 would be Dragon Gundam. I love how that mobile suit looks.
My number.
I love it more than Shenlong Gundam wing fans. I hate Shenlong. Ultron's cool, but like because that's the other one that has like a dragon's head, and so it's just like no. Ultron Gundam's fine, but Shenlong versus Dragon Gundam, and I'd pick Dragon Gundam anytime.
Yeah, same goes for the Shuffle Alliance. Number 2 would be the Dragon Gundam.
Okay. And your reasoning for it.
Because of how many fights it's been in and how many close calls, you know.
So you love it for its agility.
Oh yes.
And the beam flags and the extendable arms, things like that.
Number 2 for any other Gundams would be Noble Gundam.
All right, I need an explanation here. Why Magical Girl Gundam?
I don't know. As much as
I laugh at Noble Gundam more than I like it.
Just probably because even though it's silly with the whole ribbon-esque, it's just really funny.
Of course, the gymnast would go towards that.
It's just really funny.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Because
we're never playing a Gundam game because you're gonna look for Noble Gundam.
I every time I see all those wonderful poses, I'm gonna think, oh, Adam's gonna be so annoyed with that.
I hate it. It's a girly Gundam. It really is. And it doesn't fit Allenby. That's my other problem with it too. Okay, so then my number 1, obviously, if people haven't figured it out, it is a tie between Burning Gundam and Master Gundam. Because here's the thing. When I pick characters in video games, I pick solid protectors, and that is who the Burning Gundam is. Like it's got solid armor, it could take a lot of a beating, but it can also deal out a lot of punishment when it needs to. And that's Burning Gundam in a nutshell. Why am I putting Master with it? Because Master also has that imposing presence that a lot of people discount. Because here's the thing. I don't know how to explain this other than a WoW context, so people have to just deal with it. Nobody respects a monk tank until they've actually had to deal with him. Okay? Because even an agile tank is still a powerhouse, and that's what Master Gundam is. It doesn't look big or imposing, but once it gets into the fight, you can see exactly how fierce it is. And one of the main reasons I say that is because, one of Master's traits is throwing punches left and right. And how does this Gundam showcase it? It has tow cables go out to extend the punch and make it hurt harder. So I love the innovation there, but I also love that if this thing wanted to become a defensive bulwark, it could, because all it had to do was, bam, hit its fist, and that big cloak goes all the way around it. And how do you get through that freaking thing? And so at that point, like, to all the people who couldn't take a hit, you fucking kidding me? That cloak goes up and nothing can get past it. In my opinion, nothing gets past it. And so at that point, all he has to do is just darkness finger you from a distance and then you're done. So I think they both fit that tanky aspect in their own unique way. And yeah, I love Master Gundam just as much as I love Burning Gundam.
And my number 1 for the Shuffle Alliance would be Burning Gundam. Because they're just nothing.
Praise God, Gundam.
Hey, he's got cool abilities.
Yes, and now Heat End is like the coolest thing.
And as for any other Gundam, for number 1 would be Shadow Gundam for me.
Okay, and explain that one.
Because of how it moves and how it uses its ability.
You just want to spin around like the Tasmanian devil, don't you?
Oh, yes. And stealing people's lunch money.
I knew that was coming back. Yeah, it is kind of the roguey ninja. I'm not surprised that that's on your list. Because it is kind of the characters that you usually pick. You like the faster characters.
I'm sorry, but I love the whole Schwartz bowling domo.
Oh, jeez. He took his lunch money and a half. And I like an honorable mention for me would be Shadow Gundam. But part of the reason that I can't take it seriously is A, its appearance, because I have such a contradiction with it. And B, the spinning around like the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, but still.
I actually like when they had those moments of like, like the classic Japanese samurai kind of deal, where he would slice a bunch of things and then sheath them and they'd all fall apart. But they didn't do that enough with Schwartz, in my opinion.
Oh, true.
They did not do that enough. All right, so then in that case,
I guess I take it a lot. I probably like the Gundams that do really quick speed attacks compared to...
Yeah. And also another honorable mention that I put in would be Rising Gundam, because that's a balanced Gundam right there. It's got the right amount of long range, the right amount of short range. It like if I was going to introduce somebody to Gundam, I would bring up Rising Gundam. It is just the run-of-the-mill average kind of deal. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I always try and keep straight of which one's Rising and which one's
That's
shiny.
the one that Rain piloted.
Yeah, no, I always want to think the opposite.
The ultimate bullseye, Rising Arrow. Okay, and it also was a beam arrow. So suck it, Star Wars. They found a way to make laser arrows. Laser arrows, damn it. That would be so cool, a lightsaber bow. So we've talked about the best. What would we consider to be the worst Gundam?
Number 3 would probably be the... Oh, I can't remember how to pronounce its name.
My number 3 is Noble Gundam, for being such a contradiction to its own pilot.
The
Mandala Gundam?
That one would be the number 3 for me.
Oh, jeez, that is such a... Especially when you saw his previous Gundam. That looked badass. That actually might have... If we had seen that in action, I think it would have contended with you against Shadow Gundam, would it? Because his was the Gundam with the big claws. Like, would that have been in contention with Shadow Gundam?
The previous one?
Yes.
I think that would have been better than...
Oh, it would have been better than Shadow Gundam.
No. I would say that would be equal to...
Yeah. That was so much a better Gundam, and then Mandala Gundam comes out, and it's just like, what the fuck? Especially since he's like the general of the Gundam Federation. It's just like, oh, bullshit.
It was just the weirdest design, and I'm like, how can that thing even move?
Yeah. My number 2 is going to be Volter Gundam. And one of the main reasons that I consider it to be the worst is it's not even a proper mobile suit, if you think about it. Because it's basically got these tiny little legs holding it up. It's only threatening when those legs aren't out, and when it's that giant wrecking ball. But the problem is that you then lose one of its most intimidating aspects, which is that mask, where it's just, it looks fierce. And so at that point, I would say my number 2 is Volter Gundam for not even being a Gundam, as far as I'm concerned. And nobody's going to make that argument to me. It's not a Gundam. It shouldn't have the title of Gundam. It's basically the warrior wheel of G Gundam is what it is.
My number 2 would probably be the Grand Gundam.
Okay, all right. I can get that too. So give your reasoning on that.
It's just too big. I don't know how it can, it just...
Would you like me to open a can of tuna for you? Yeah.
It's even worse when it's fighting inside Neo Japan. It's like, how can you even run that sucker?
Yeah, Grandmaster Gundam.
It could probably just sit there, standing there, and you couldn't even defeat it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like, geez, it's like a big size, probably the size of a building, and I'm surprised it can, I don't know.
See, and the problem is like Gundam has this weird fascination with having really big adversaries near the end, and like having so Grandmaster Gundam would qualify as what they call a mobile armor, which is just basically a much bigger type of mobile suit. And this is no exception, because it has the same problem that I have with all of those, which is they are so big, I just don't see them as being a threat, because it looks like it would take forever for any of them to move.
I know. It's like you could probably outrun them.
Yeah. I mean, like, here's the best example. So, like I said, I've played some Gundam games in the past, and one of the ones that gets advertised that people love, a lot of Universal Century people love this, is a mobile suit called Big Zam. It's a big old mobile armor that's basically a giant UFO-looking central structure with two big legs. And look, it is loaded for bear. It's got tons of cannons and everything like that. But when you take that away, it has the same problem that it does in the Gundam games, which is it only damages you by walking towards you. And that's not intimidating to me. That's not big and nasty. And so at that, and my problem extends from Big Zam all the way down. All of them. The only one that I would say that doesn't really is when you have things like, I can't ever remember their names, but they actually look like Megazord size Gundams. And so it like, okay, well that looks like it still could be a problem. But then you have the Big Zams and the Nuve Zeals and it's just, and Grandmaster Gundam is the absolute worst example of it. So I will agree with you on that one. What would be your worst Gundam overall?
The only one that I did not really care for was probably the Jester Gundam.
Yeah, I could see that. Go ahead and explain, though.
I don't know. It just annoyed me. And the pilot of it was no better than...
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just... Not that I say I'm afraid of clowns, but I just felt like...
That made you afraid of clowns, is what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying... I don't see how this person could be taken seriously as a Gundam fighter.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm going to tie it. I'm going to tie my number one because they both have the exact same problem. Mandala Gundam and Grandmaster Gundam / Grand Gundam. I don't know how those move. I don't know how they attack. I can kind of get how they attack, but I don't know how you move in combat. These are just giant artillery positions. And Mandala Gundam is just, it's a walking contradiction. How on earth does it move? How on earth does it function? Like, I get it that the Sega Genesis game Balls was a thing, but none of that, both of them, none of it made sense on why any of that would have been militarily viable. Let's make a giant Gundam made of 4 other Gundams where its body can barely move. It has to be stuck to a power generator, and the only thing that's like even remotely intimidating on it is maybe one of its arms and this tiny little crown portion that can throw out Street Fighter Hadokens. All right, that's it. And Mandala Gundam, same fucking problem. How does it move? How is it intimidating? How is it anything? Especially when you saw Kiral's previous Gundam, and that was awesome. I'm good. Did you do your number one? I can't remember now.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I picked
I think we were both in agreement on this one. For you guys, the silliest Gundam is Tequila Gundam. Because of its name, because it's not intimidating, because it is the most racially stereotypical Gundam in this series, except I'm going to say there's one sillier than that. That's fucking Butler Gundam, boys! Butler Gundam! It has to be driven via a driving wheel, and yes, its mustache is the tiara. It's sillier than Tequila Gundam. Look, for as much as people love Tequila Gundam and how stupid it is, people forget that there's a lot stupider in this series, like Butler Gundam. What, nothing to add there?
No.
But Butler Gundam is still sillier than Tequila Gundam.
Yeah. I would say the most unique...
Because you had that look of like, why are you putting it above Tequila Gundam? No, Tequila Gundam is equally silly, but...
Well, I would think that the most interesting design for a Gundam would be one of the windmill Gundams.
Oh, God. And the fact that it was like a unit...
That was so strange.
It was so stupid. And like part of me, because you have origins in Holland, and I was like,
I mean,
oh, God.
At least I think I liked the... What was it? Was Norway? Or
Nero Norway, Viking Gundam.
No, it wasn't that one. I was thinking of the
Mermaid Gundam?
Yeah, at least those ones looked a little bit better.
Those ones look cool.
Compared to the windmill ones.
I put Mermaid Gundam up there with Cobra Gundam, and the fact that I love that they have these transformations associated with the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Cobra Gundam, where you actually had a cobra in the seat. But what about Funseki? Funseki's just fucking silly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great.
But it was awesome.
The horse has to be in a damn fight suit. Oh. All right. Well, we've gone into good, the bad, the silly of the mecha, and we've covered the story. We've covered a lot of characters. I said I was going to go back into Allenby, but I think we've pretty much hit all the nails on the head for both the problems and the pros of Allenby's character.
Pretty much, yes.
So at that point, I think we have actually a good jumping off point from here. So overall, you are happy that you saw G Gundam?
Yeah, I was.
Are you happy that we have started this whole podcast? Because that was the other thing you had doubts on, is like whether or not this was even worth it.
No, I didn't say I was, interested in doing a podcast.
All right.
I just did not know how it would go for something. I'm like, I don't even know what to say about this.
So Andrea, I have good news and I have bad news for you. Well, let me go ahead and go into the bad news, because there's a couple things. So we're going to have to wait on the next anime that we're going to start up.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are a couple of reasons for it. One, we're going to be doing a live stream answering you guys' specific questions on stuff that we might not have covered. Like, what was our opinion on Chico Rodriguez or whatnot. So we aren't going to be starting up the next anime right away. And part of that also is because of the holidays. Like, we're going to get busy very quickly.
And we need to catch up on some of the other stuff that we're working on.
I'm not even throwing that into the mix. There are other things we want to catch up on, but, so I'm going to toss that out there, but we're not going to get into things right away. But the good news is that the next anime we're going to be taking on, you personally picked for this. And I'm kind of excited because I can't think of a better anime that I would want to introduce you to. The only downside of that is that we go from 49 episodes to, I think, 54. So we'll have to figure out how to divide those up. But the next anime podcast that we're going to be doing, which I promise I will have a name for, not just the, whatever anime podcast, I'll actually figure out a name for it. But our next anime is going to be Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So you guys can look forward to that very soon. Andrea, you are excited to see this. Ever since you saw the trailer, you were like, I am interested. Mm-hmm. So you are getting what you want out of it. Let us know what you guys thought of G Gundam in the comments below. In case people have not noticed this, I have started putting up G Gundam podcast episodes on the RSS feed. If you want it to stay on YouTube after this, you have to show your support for it. You have to go out there, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, do all of that, because otherwise I am going to start taking the G Gundam podcast away in favor of the new Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood podcast. So make sure that you show support for it. Otherwise, it's going away. I'm sorry, guys. That's just the way it's going to go. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Also, make sure that you subscribe, that you, if you love the RSS feed, pimp out that RSS feed, showcase it to your friends, and see if they get into the G Gundam podcast and all the weird opinions that we had on Panty Peaks and all that fun stuff. But until then, have a happy holidays. We hope you guys have enjoyed this journey through G Gundam. I've enjoyed it. I know Andrea has. And we will see you guys next time for Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Until then, it's time for me to just simply say to you, Andrea,
I trust you forever.